The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
Okay, let's go.
How is the New Hampshire primary different from the Iowa caucuses? New Hampshire will hold the first primary election of the 2024 election cycle today, while Iowa held the first caucuses of the Republican nominating contest last week. In a caucus, each voter is required to appear in person at a specific precinct location to cast a ballot. A primary is much more straightforward, with polling locations across the state open for a set number of hours to allow voters to cast their ballots. Because of the relative ease of voting and the option for undeclared voters to participate in either party's primary, New Hampshire generally sees higher turnout than Iowa.
Well, alrighty then. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hey, listen, I wanted to play that because after yesterday's episode, I was like, God, why do they call it a caucus or a primary? And I got confused because in the episode yesterday, I was referring to the New Hampshire caucus, which came on the heels of the Iowa caucus. So I thought they were all caucuses at this stage. But for some reason, then I kept seeing it called primary. So anyway, I wanted to figure out the difference, and there you have it. That is the difference. And so I correct myself. Yesterday I referred to it as the New Hampshire caucus, but I guess it's a New Hampshire primary. So it looks like it has to do with whether you have to basically show up and vote in person or not. And we shall see if that makes a difference in the results. Now that it's down to Trump versus Haley, let's see if that, I don't know, changes anything, makes it closer. All right. And yes, we've got some new intro music at the beginning of the pod there, mainly because I have a friend and she told me a while back, actually, when I asked her opinion on my intro, she said, she said it's soft. She goes, "You're soft, Ray D." And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I kind of am soft, actually. But yeah, she said my intro was soft. And then I said, what about the outro? She's like, that shit's soft as well. She's like, your podcast is kind of hard. You know, you kind of give some hard info, but your intro and outros are soft. So I finally got around to finding something I think is not soft. A little royalty-free clip of Bad to the Bone. Actually, I went from that jazz intro to another little kind of like futuristic intro that ran for the first couple weeks of January. And now we are going to go Bad to the Bone for a while. But hey, if anybody has any hard intros, send them my way. I do not want to get accused of being soft in any context. Shucky ducky, quack quack. All right, so today I was going to do the deep shallow dive on South Africa and apartheid and Nelson Mandela, kind of all in one, but I am waiting on some more information from my cousin Alexi, who lives in South Africa. So I figured I'd wait and give him a chance to send me stuff because that would be beneficial for that story. So I'm going to start off with reading a few things that are in the news. Man, this is crazy stuff. And again, I mean, no judgment. This is more just interesting / unfortunate. But back when Novak Djokovic, the tennis player, was refusing to get the vaccine, he basically came under fire from a lot of people. And then there was a journalist in particular, a gentleman named Mike Dixon, who really kind of went after Djokovic. And one of his articles said, Djokovic could ruin his chances of becoming the GOAT by refusing to take the vaccine. It is a strange hill to die on for a player who is so desperate to be loved. And I guess yesterday it says, journalist who shamed Novak Djokovic for being unjabbed dies suddenly after receiving 5th booster. Yikes. That is not good. I don't wish any of that. I really don't. That is not good. May he rest in peace. But man, that was that whole thing was a slippery slope. It really was. Man, that whole topic of the vaccine. All right, here's something else I want to play for you. So, obviously, I did a entire DSD exclusive on Julian Assange. It's episode number 58. Honestly, I think it's one of the best. So if you haven't listened to it, give it a listen. But man, the story of Julian Assange is it's just insane. I mean, he is literally in a maximum security prison in England without being charged for anything. But so Tucker Carlson, man, Tucker hasn't been on the DSD and now he's like monopolizing it. But he went out to see Julian with his wife Stella. I think I mentioned this many episodes ago, and I just kind of saw the clips. So let me play this one for you.
Any quick thoughts?
Well, that's just a total outrage. I mean, it's a total outrage that they're holding that man who hasn't committed or even been charged with a crime in this country. I mean, that's a maximum security prison filled with murderers, and the people who reside there, the inmates, are treated like animals. And he's not an animal. He's a journalist who has committed no crime. And so anyone who's in favor of that, anyone who supports his continued torture, is your enemy. Who's the enemy of free expression, of free speech, of the basic liberties that used to define the United States.
So I wanted to play that because, and I'm going to play a few different things. I want to get you thinking. I really do. I want to get you thinking. And, again, not thinking in a negative way, but just opening your mind to the fact that there are things that happen that quite frankly are not fair and they should not happen. And the Julian Assange situation is exactly that. And what's interesting is you would think there would be so much more outrage in the media. Like it's almost like the entire media would band together on this because, their kingpin, so to speak, is being held, unrightfully, but they're not, and they won't. And that to me just shows, they're probably like, oh God, I don't want that to happen to me. So I'm just going to let it go. And again, I don't blame them. I really don't. But man, it makes you realize how powerful whatever entity out there is that can do stuff like that. So I got a lot of good feedback about the World Economic Forum episode from last week. I think it was on last Friday. And then more and more clips are coming out about the sessions in the World Economic Forum, which, man, some of these, they're just weird. Like, they're just weird. And the people who are saying them, who are in high positions, it just comes off so bad, in my opinion.
Let's look at the head of NATO, who for some reason seems to think his opinion matters more than yours. Here he is offering it.
Is that if we want that to happen, a peaceful, just end to this war, the way to get there is more weapons to Ukraine.
So that was the head of NATO on Russell Brand. Welcome to the show, Russell. By the way, if you don't listen to Russell Brand, he's actually incredibly insightful. The only challenge is, dude talks so fast, and with that accent, it's sometimes hard to understand him. But the head of NATO said, if we want a peaceful action to the war in Ukraine, we have to send more weapons to Ukraine.
So the more credible we are in our military support, the more likely it is that the diplomats will succeed.
So you see, because you probably aren't clever enough, you don't understand how giving more and more weapons to Ukraine to perpetuate a war with a country with a nuclear armory, in this instance, Russia, that leads to peace. Do you see? Do you not get it? God, you're stupid. Did you not go to university? Are you not part of the professional media class? Perhaps you're a working person. Perhaps you just went to a normal school. Maybe you don't trust the legacy media. Let me explain again. Why are you a trucker and therefore probably a racist? Why are you a key worker for a hospital? Hero 1 minute, hated the next minute, when you're not fodder for the system no more? Let me explain again. Continuing war leads to peace. Do you see?
Continuing war leads to peace. Man, he is hilarious, but yeah, God, he talks so fast. Sometimes I have to like slow it down to understand him. All right, next up, I'm going to play you a clip from Glenn Beck on the Patrick Bet David podcast. Big fan of PBD, by the way. I like that podcast. If you're looking for another good podcast, the Patrick Bet David podcast is a very good one. Can't say I'm a real fan of Glenn Beck. He's a big conservative voice. Has a really big following, actually. But no, I'm not really a fan of this guy. I don't listen to him. I catch a clip here and there, but not really. I think he's another one of those big bags of air that just realized he gained an audience and makes money off of that. But this clip is interesting because I do agree with what he says in the clip. The question becomes, who is he saying it about?
That a black swan event will collapse it. And I think we are a war, a serious economic shock, a mass killing, a terrorist attack. That's when things will change. I think we're on the edge of, we could have a dictatorship from either direction if we're not careful. We have to know the Constitution, know our rights, be God-loving, God-fearing, humble people, that when something goes wrong, we do what we used to do, join hands with one another and say, brother, I'm here for you. We can get through this. But we're in a place to where I think really bad people in other countries know it. And that's why they'll attack. And when one of them attacks, they'll all attack because we're so weak. Mm-hmm. We have to be together as people to be able to survive. But I think we could be seeing a completely different country by January 1st.
All right, so that was an interesting clip. He's talking about January 1st of next year. Obviously, by that time, we'll know kind of what happened in the election. And, I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off. And if somebody feels that way, definitely reach out to me and give me your thoughts. But, it just feels like kind of building on yesterday's episode where, I read you all those events that have happened that are kind of now out of sight, out of mind. But, I just don't remember life being like this, where it was like one catastrophe after another after another. Now, with saying that, I do realize that maybe it was like this before. Maybe this is no different than life in the early 2000s. I mean, let alone the 1990s, 1980s. I don't really remember the 80s too much, but maybe it was like this, but maybe because we did not have social media and the access to, I guess, data, information, world affairs, we really only got that on our TVs and then through the newspaper and then through the radio, if people listen to the radio. So maybe things have not changed, but the ability to see them on a daily basis and the access to the information, maybe that's what's changed. And so that's why they are, so top of mind, so daily. But I don't know, for some reason, I feel like things are just, it's just kind of like fire drill after fire drill after fire drill. But hey, I might be wrong about that. He talked about a black swan event, and if you don't really know what that means, so a black swan event is a term used to describe an extremely rare and unpredictable event that has a major impact and is typically associated with negative consequences. So some examples of black swan events would be like 9/11 was a black swan event, the 2008 financial crisis was a black swan event, the COVID-19 pandemic was a black swan event. So the question is, are we primed and due for another black swan event this year leading into this election? I guess our last one would be COVID-19 in the 2020 election. And again, the reason why I think it's plausible, how about that it's plausible is because of the divisive nature of our politics right now. And again, love him or hate him, Trump is he's well, what is he, man? He's a lightning rod. How about that? I'll just say that. He's a lightning rod. And there's things that, there's people that want him. And then there's a lot of people, I think, I'm not just talking the voters, but I'm talking the powers that be that don't want him. So, man, I don't know. I got to think this through a little more. And speaking of thinking things through, Elon Musk is back in the news doing more. I don't know. This guy is weird, man. I can't figure this dude out. I definitely think there is something interesting under the surface with Musk, but he is back in Israel with Ben Shapiro, and they are at some Auschwitz Birkenau concentration camp. And again, I mean, no judgment from me on any of that stuff, but he's just weird. Like, he does weird stuff. Like it'll be interesting. The last time he went to Israel, if you remember, was maybe a month ago. And then he came back and sort of had a meltdown on stage where he told all the sponsors, including Disney and CEO Bob Iger, to go F themselves. But now he's back. He did a little press event, like I said, with Ben Shapiro yesterday. And I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird. Like, things are weird. I'm not judging him. I'm not agreeing, disagreeing, anything. I'm just calling a weird. That's it. All right, last clip for today. And this is another guy that, I don't know, sometimes I like him, sometimes I think he's awful. But Bill Maher interviewing California Governor Gavin Newsom.
I feel like the last couple of years you've purposely picked this fight with the red states. I mean, the DeSantis. Yeah, but I don't want to live in the Civil War country.
I agree with that.
You know what? Well, but you seem like you purposely want to set up this dichotomy between, this is a blue state and that's a red state. Yeah. And I don't want to live in that country. I like Florida.
I'm with you. And by the way, I like Florida as well. I like all these states. I completely agree. I don't want to have a state of mind that's a constant fight or flight. We've gone through so much. We've been polarized and traumatized. This has been a tough 5-6 years across the globe, not just in this country. That said, I'm not going to sit back and watch. You made the point just a moment ago in your monologue. You got folks out there trying to bring us back to a pre-1960s world. America in reverse, rolling back voting rights, LGBTQ rights, women's rights, not just access to abortion, but contraception. I mean, it's a profound and consequential moment. And you could sit by and say, well, I really want to get along as these guys are rolling back the clock, or you can stand tall and assert yourself.
Dude is good, man. I got to give him credit. I love this part.
We've been polarized and traumatized.
He's like, we've been polarized and traumatized. Some of us have been circumcised. Others have been hypnotized, but we've all realized that we can't be categorized as unauthorized, oversized, supersized, and make sure you're not compromised or monopolized. And after this rant, Ray D will no longer be able to conduct these podcasts unsupervised. Call a spade, everybody.
This episode was brought to you by Boost Liquid Vitamins. Wake up, take your Boost, start your day. Drink your vitamins, build your immune system with Boost. Available on Boost.com.